get the different sound, because the sound up there, when it was built, it was the most acoustically correct hall this side of the Mississippi. I mean, it is a premier.
And Neil would
Which one's that? The one up
love
here?
that.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I
Steve-
wasn't
does-
paying
Yeah,
attention.
no, oh, you're fine.
He does organ recitals at the
At
Tabernacle,
Hawaii.
and he's
Oh.
done that for years. But he's doing one on Easter. If
Yeah.
anybody wants to go, it's the Lamb of God. But
Oh, yeah.
I'm
So
gonna-
we're doing that in
I'm
Idaho
gonna
Falls,
try.
too.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, in
I'm gonna
Virginia.
try to go.
And we're doing
Maybe-
it here,
but it's
too.
sort of
Yes,
hard.
yes, so
It's
we're
the
playing.
Jensen.
Yeah, we're doing a Jensen, Rexburg, and Idaho Falls. We're doing 3 performances, so.
Are you in that?
I am,
Are you really?
yeah.
That would be really. And is it before Easter, leading up to Easter? Because I think I leave to go out of town. I have to look and see if
I'd
I
have to
leave.
look at this, I have the poster in
I
my
think I
car.
leave Monday. I have to look and see. I haven't bought plane tickets yet.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. I think we might be on TV.
There you go.
So
No.
Anyway, I think it will be amazing, so.
Yeah, I'll let
we're
you know
actually
the
late. We started.
dates.
Well, this meeting will be short.
I'm gonna need
Hopefully,
this.
the executive meeting will be short, too.
Like I said, I will have to leave no later than 5:30.
We'll be out of here like this. I need to leave about that time, too, so. We
You
have
played for this, at
state
this
youth
one.
or
Oh,
state youth activity tonight, so. I'm kind of in charge, so.
Thank you.
Should be here by phone.
Hi, Deb.
Hi.
Go ahead, Mr. Pacer. I'm going to run and grab one more thing,
So get started?
please.
Okay.
I have mine. I'm good.
Oh, I have one, thank you. Thank
Yes,
you,
please.
because
Sure, please.
I do cough like if I don't.
Jeb.
Okay, you ready, Renee? Should start. I call this meeting to order and would like to welcome you all and thank you for being here. All board members are present and Angie Oliver is joining us by phone. There are 2 items, the Idaho State Insurance Plan Proposal and public written comment. We will begin with the School District 25 Education Foundation Annual Report provided by Courtney Fisher and Victoria Bird. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Okay, so we are here this afternoon to give you the annual report for the Education Foundation.
Thanks.
And
Thank you.
many of you may not know that in addition to my role as the district's communications and community relations coordinator, I also serve as the director of the School District 25 Education Foundation. So part of the purpose of this overview today will be educating you who may not be familiar with what the Education Foundation does, a little bit about what we do, and then just some of our highlights from the last year. So the purpose of the School District 25 Education Foundation is to support the mission and vision of the School District 25 by providing resources that enrich teaching and learning. So we support teachers and we support learners. The Education Foundation was incorporated in 1985. So for nearly 4 decades, the foundation has served a continuous role to support School District 25. The foundation is comprised of current and retired teachers, as well as community members and business leaders in our community. The organization's mission is to support efforts that enhance teaching and learning, but we operate independently from the school district. So we are a separate entity. We are our own 501c3. So I wanted to share, and I've invited Victoria here with me. She's our board chair, and she's served in that role for the past 2 years, and we are very lucky to have Victoria in a volunteer role with the foundation. She's been on the foundation for now
Since 2014.
7 years.
I'll let you do the math.
Oh, 8 years. It's 2022 now. Okay.
Time flies.
So in your board packet, we put together the annual report that has who we are, who our members are, and it lists the roles and responsibilities of those individuals, whether they serve as treasurer or what committee roles they play. So I wanted to share a few notable achievements from the Ed Foundation since the last annual report, which was given in November 10th, 2020. Normally, we'll give this report in November, but because we knew we were having welcoming new board members, we wanted to wait until, so that we had an opportunity to educate you about what we do. So we've got some really exciting things to share. As of January 31st, 2022, the value of the Education Foundation assets is $2,024,338.88. This is a substantial growth from 3 years ago, where I believe we were about $200,000. So we have grown tremendously, and with that, we have tried to put in the organizational structure so that we can continue to grow this foundation as it deserves to grow to better serve the district. Our business and individual contributions from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 are totaled $146,763.65. While this total reflects a decrease of just over $16,000, it's important to note that this number reflects the first year the Festival of Trees was suspended. So I'm really pretty pleased with that number, that it's as high as it was, even without the festival revenue. After thoughtful and careful consideration, the school district board, the Education Foundation board, did announce in April of 2021 that the board of directors determined that we were going to permanently pause the Festival of Trees. This decision was made after considerable investigation into the return on investment of that event, and as we continue to deliberate what it cost, both in district manpower and money versus what we raised. So this pause of the festival in 2020 really gave us the opportunity to evaluate what our goals and the focus of our efforts should be. And we've really put a focus on making our funds and our investments work harder for us, and maybe not have the volunteer manpower and the school district manpower and resources that it took to run an event like festival, and just prioritize our objectives. So one of those things that we've prioritized is the management of the Perkins Family Trust. That is where the bulk of our assets come from. And I think probably 3 years ago, we determined that investment wasn't performing satisfactorily. It was maybe making a return of 1%. And so we made some really easy adjustments to that portfolio. And since then, it has just performed incredibly. So the minimum annual return expectation is equal to 3.18%, and every year that account has exceeded that number. The 10-year average expectation for this is 7.61%. So we've gone from 1% to hopefully it will continue on that trajectory upwards, but that's 7.61%, which we're really proud of. As of this month, annual income is expected to be greater than $76,000, which is about $20,000 more than we need to fulfill our objectives with that account, which I'll share with you in just a minute. The associated risk is moderate but stable. The total value of the Perkins investment as of January 10th, 2022 is $1.6 million. So, and it continues to grow. So we established in 2019 the Finance Committee, and that Finance Committee plays an advisory role. It's not all board members. We've invited financial experts from throughout the community to serve in an advisory capacity on that, and they evaluate how our investments are performing and make recommendations to either improve, move things. We've moved accounts a couple of times when that has been warranted, and it's always a very thoughtful and very deliberate approach. That committee is chaired by Ms. Christy Borgelthaus, who served as our committee, our board chair for several years. And it's advised by Mr. Robert Scoville of Modern Woodman. The trust provides annual funding to support School District 25 music and debate programs. The trust also funds two $2,000 scholarships for every high school, and we are pleased that we were also able to open one scholarship up this year for New Horizon high school graduate. So that's something we've been working toward for the past couple of years. We're really excited about that. Our third distribution last year went out in August, and we awarded 9 scholarships totaling $18,000. 6 scholarships were new, 3 were renewed from 2020, and 4 were deferred. We do allow those students to defer the scholarships for 2 years if they need to. I already said that. This year's scholarship application is now open, and it will be open through March 4th, and then we will announce this year's recipients the first week of April. We also annually distribute $3,500 each to Century,
Highland.
Highland, and Pocatello High School to be split evenly between their music programs and their debate programs. One of our goals is to make our money work harder for us, and so we also decided to create a general fund investment. We had over $200,000 sitting in our general fund for several years that is just sitting there. It's not making. We had a couple of CDs, maybe making 2%. So we decided to take the bulk of those funds and create a new investment so that we will make a return on that and be able to put that money to better use to grow our exposure and do other activities that will help us grow as a foundation. So right now, those funds were either previously earning less than 1% or sitting in the general fund earning nothing. The expectation is to have about $9,000 of income annually, and as of this week, the account is up to $10,660, and the annual income is actually going to exceed the $9,000 as the funds increase the monthly dividend starting March 1st, 2020 by 7.78%. So that risk is also moderate and stable. We also partner with the Simplot Education Council to coordinate the STAR projects, which is really exciting. So they raise all the money and donate it to us, and then we help coordinate all the ordering for that. Shauna Sprague, who's the Ed Foundation Secretary and Treasurer, helps do all that ordering. I sit on the Simplot Education Council, so I help advise where those grants go. And this year it was really great because they increased their allotment for those. They're $750 grants, and there were 41 applications, and they funded 38 of those. So that was absolutely phenomenal. The ones that didn't get funded really had to do with they weren't approved curriculum and things like that. So there was a very distinct reason why they weren't funded. So it's really great that we have such a great education partner in Simplot. Our second annual participation in Idaho Gives raised $4,410, and we will be participating in that endeavor as well. We registered today for the 2022 Idaho Gives, which will be held the week of May 2nd through May 5th. Last year, we also participated in the STEM Up program, which was a new program for us, and we allocated $17,500 of money that we raised toward that program, and then Idaho State University and INL each contributed another $10,000. That's something we're doing again this year. We're not giving quite as much this year. We donated $12,500. But we have determined that the money we raise for Idaho through Idaho Gives will be go toward that STEM program because we think it's really valuable, and it really it touches so many kids and impacts so many kids and teachers in our district. I've included in your report a detailed list of those individual and business contributions made to the Ed Foundation, but I just wanted to touch on some of the things that didn't go into that annual report and some of the highlights from our year. And I've invited Victoria here today. She is an integral part of everything we do at the Education Foundation, and I wanted her to share a little bit more about our strategic goals and objectives moving forward. Let me just tell you a little bit about Victoria. She's a Pocatello native. She's an alumna of School District 25. She graduated from Highland High School. She has 3 boys currently. I think this is still accurate, right?
3 still
Franklin.
at school, yes.
3 Century, Franklin, and Green Acres, and she has a 2020 graduate from Century High School. She's active in our community. She serves on the chamber. She does their LEAP program, serves on the leadership board, and she's, like I said, been on our board for 8 years now. So
A very
Victoria, I will
long
turn it over
time.
to you.
Thank you. Like Courtney mentioned, I came today from the Chamber of Commerce LEAP program, which is a leadership program that we run. We recruit high school students from School District 25, and we give them an opportunity to get into businesses and experience some leadership skills and some opportunities that that the community has to offer to hopefully not export so many of our talented youth. Thank you for having us. I want to present just very quickly our strategic plan for the Education Foundation. We created this strategic plan 2 years ago and have been updating it as we've accomplished things, but truly we have 3 goals when it comes to Education Foundation: awareness, investment, and expansion. In each of these areas, we have created benchmarks to achieve those things. Through awareness, we have created a marketing committee. Like Courtney mentioned, a few years ago, we created a finance committee where we have invited finance professionals from the community to help us make the best financial choices. When we received the Perkins grant, we very quickly learned that we were not all financial experts and weren't entirely sure what to do to make sure that that money was both safe and also grew in perpetuity so that we could use it forever and ever. And through that committee, one of their recommendations was to also create a marketing committee. And so we have invited business leaders, business professionals that are specific to marketing to help us be able to share what we're doing with the community to both differentiate what the Ed Foundation is versus what the school district is and how we work to support what is happening through the school district. That committee is chaired by Rainbow Maldonado, and they have been working to create a program where we are hopefully implementing employee contributions in different businesses. Currently, we have employee contributions from the school district where any employee of the school district can contribute $1, $2 every paycheck toward the Education Foundation. And our goal is to be able to offer that to businesses throughout the community. Many of our business leaders and professionals have students that benefit from School District 25, and this would be a very easy way for them to contribute directly to benefit their students. We also are working toward new literature to increase our awareness, which includes we've updated our website as well as creating a trifold. Lots of businesses want to know who we are, and a good way to do that is just through good old printed paper material. That trifold has taken on a whole identity of its own. The second area of focus has been investment, and Courtney went into really great detail about how we've been doing that by making our money work harder for us, and we've been very pleased to see that with minimal effort on our part, and by turning that over to people that we trust with that money, we've seen that money grow substantially and it has allowed us to be able to provide additional scholarships as well as donate to the STEM Up program. For those of you that aren't familiar with the STEM Up program, what we did last year, and I believe what will be happening this year, is they, through the different partnerships, we create STEM kits. So they have all kinds of different activities that they can take home, work with their parents to build. We built some sort of my fourth grader last year got one, and we built, we wired and we soldered and we learned all kinds of stuff, and it was a really wonderful way to get parents engaged with STEM learning and to not be when I hear STEM, it makes me very nervous because I'm not a math guru by any means, but it really put STEM into our home and gave us an opportunity to connect with our child and to learn something new even as parents. So we found that program to be very beneficial both for learners and families and to really bridge that gap between what's happening in the classroom and what's happening at home. Our finance committee meets quarterly, and again, they are advised very wisely, and we take those recommendations very seriously, because that money that we have stewardship over is very important. And then last, our third goal is expansion, creating additional community committees, not only the finance committee, but also the marketing committee, as well as if there are other areas of focus. We have also learned that we don't know everything about everything. And so as new opportunities develop, building partnerships with different organizations, other education experts, and best ways that we can just find out how we can serve our students best. And one other thing I skipped as we were talking about this, but one of our goals in this next year is to create an RFP to send out to our teachers to find out what are the needs in the classroom, what are the things that they need. It's easy for us to think, oh, well, if we give every teacher this, they'll be able to be successful, but nobody knows better what they need in the classroom than the teachers. So we would like to see what they would do with funds if they had them, so that we can support the needs that are real and that will really impact education for our learners.
Absolutely. We want their needs to help drive some of our focus and our goals and objectives as we move forward with everything we do, because that's why we exist.
Mm-hmm.
So any questions?
That's a lot.
The only question I had, so you mentioned teachers, are there teachers on any of your committees?
Yes, we have
Okay.
current teachers, current administrators, as well as retired teachers on our board, as well as community members and in the marketing role, marketing committee and finance committee, we have board members that serve on those committees, but the bulk of those committees are outside entities, individuals that we've brought in to just say, hey, could we tap into your expertise? And give us some recommendations. And it's been a wonderful, not just touch point, expanding our community reach and those community relations, but also the knowledge that we gain and how we can implement that in our efforts.
Right.
Great. Thank
We
you.
appreciate what you do. Okay, next, Mr. Brian Glenn will provide the Energy Conservation Program presentation for us.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Perfect. I'm glad Renee knows how to do that, so I don't have to. It's my pleasure to come again to you this year for our annual report on our energy management program. We again had a very successful year. Coming off COVID, it kind of threw a few little curveballs at us that we weren't necessarily prepared for, but we've been able to deal with those and accomplish those things. One of the things that most people generally ask us about is what our energy program primarily does. Over the last primarily since 2014, but we've had an energy program since 2002. In 2014, we realized that we needed to make some changes in our buildings and the way we were consuming energy and doing things. And one of the ways we've done that is through our energy projects, through lighting, HVAC upgrades, different controls upgrades, and those kind of things. What we've been able to do when we identify those projects is the first thing we look at is we want to try and improve the learning environment. Covered under that may be student safety, it may be making a lighting upgrade so the lighting in classrooms are better, hallway lighting may be improved. The second thing we want to do part of that program is we want to try and replace outdated equipment. Light fixtures wear out, boilers wear out, HVAC equipment wears out, and the second part of that program is we try and save energy costs as we look at that equipment that we need to phase out. And of course, the third thing that we really look at in our energy projects is we want to save on our utility costs. The ideal projects that we try and identify cover all three of those categories. Some of them only may cover one or two, but we try and cover all three in one way. Those are the projects that seem to be the most effective for us. Since 2014, we've completed 86 projects. Most of those are primarily dealing with our electrical side of things. Out of our utility costs, about 50% of that is electric. About 10% of that is gas, and 30% of that is water cost. So we do tend to focus a great deal on our electrical costs because that's where we save the most money. Those 86 projects represent a reduction of about just a little under 2.5 million kilowatt hours per year, and an annual savings of about $250,000 for those projects that we've completed. And in addition to doing that with working the Idaho Power programs, we've also received just under $364,000 of incentive money from Idaho Power for those projects that we've completed. When we first started the projects in 2014, we found out we had a large abundance of things that we could do, especially with gym lighting that was high-intensity lighting. We were able to do lighting upgrades. In 2014, 2015, 2016, we were averaging about 18 or 19 projects a year. As those low-hanging fruit projects have kind of dried up, we've tried to focus a lot more on other projects. This last year, we actually completed 4 projects. One of them was a complete LED lighting upgrade at Ellis Elementary School. As a result of that project, it's lowered our electrical bill at that building by about 33%, and it represents about $6,000 a year in savings by doing the lighting upgrade in that building. We're looking at our other buildings to identify where we should put those dollars to the most use for a return on investment in those, and we continue to do those projects. I get asked frequently how we know how our buildings are performing. All of our buildings on our K through 12 are listed in the U.S. Department of Energy's Energy Star Portfolio Manager. The way that works is we submit all our utility data to the Department of Energy, and they actually score our buildings to let us know how we are doing compared to other buildings in the district. There are currently about 13 or 14,000 K through 12 buildings in the Energy Star database. To qualify for an Energy Star rating, you have to score 70 or better. In our district, we have 20 buildings that are scored a 90 or higher. 10 of our buildings are actually 95 or higher, and we have 2 buildings that are in the 80 to 90 range. None of our buildings fall outside of that category. So compared to the national average, we're doing very well, and we're able to justify and show how our buildings are performing. Just to give you an idea how that works, this is a 5-year comparison. You'll see that first on the left is 2014. That is the year where our utility costs, and this is for electrical use only, that's the year that our utility and our electrical usage was the highest. It's when we decided to make a change in our energy program to really focus on energy projects and changing things. Previously, our energy program was more devoted to the people side of things, making sure people were turning off lights, shutting down computers. But after that 2014 year, we kind of decided we needed to redirect some energies. You can see how those have been affected as we've done those energy projects over the year. The one outlier, as you'll see in 2020, was we had a significant drop in our energy usage and costs. That was due to COVID. Our buildings were basically closed for 3 months. You can see as we've come back to our normal school schedule for the most part, those utility costs have been more reflected. But you can see how our energy program through the course of those years has really affected our bottom line and left a lot more of those dollars available in the general fund for other things. According to our energy software from 2002 through 2021, they estimate that we've saved just a little under $14.5 million on our energy utilities through the course of our energy program. Overall, we're doing fairly well. There are always things we're looking at to improve on, and we continue to strive to bring those costs down and keep them under control, especially as our utility costs have started to rise. And water has gone up. We've seen utility rate increases in all of the categories across our utilities. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take any questions.
I was actually kind of surprised that the COVID numbers weren't smaller in comparison, but just an observation. The second question I had is, do we do anything, or have we looked at the busing and the gas buses versus natural? I mean, has any study been done?
We have. The thing we run into is we've looked at going to propane instead of diesel. The problem we ran into is with the hills we have around here, the propane buses don't have enough horsepower to climb the hills. We've also looked at doing electric buses. The cost for an electric bus is somewhere around $900,000 a bus. And then we would also have a significant influence in the infrastructure to be able to plug those buses in. For us to change all the buses to electric and charging stations, you're looking at an investment of somewhere around $9 million. It's very significant from a cost analysis standpoint. We're far better off to spend those dollars on lighting upgrades or HVAC upgrades for a return on that investment. For the COVID year, even though our buildings were shut down and didn't have students, We still did have teachers in the building. So we were still running HVAC, base lights, things like that, because our buildings weren't totally empty.
Right?
That's why those costs weren't significantly lower during that time period.
Thank you.
No problem.
Did water management get, you have the water management on the computers too then?
We do. We have transitioned all our irrigation systems over to a system called Baseline. The previous time clocks we had, we basically had a full-time grounds person that all they did all summer was drive around and adjust time clocks to try and compensate for weather and activities and different things. Our new irrigation system looks at the weather programs automatically. It's pulled right out of the National Weather Service. And it'll adjust the watering times based on what the weather is, temperature, and there's about 20 factors that it looks at for that. It's reduced our water costs about 20% since we've installed that system. And we're continuing to tweak and work on that, trying to establish how much water different areas need and set up that that baseline for those clocks to adjust from. Has taken us some getting used to, but it's working very well. In addition, it saves us the manpower of having somebody from grounds just driving all over town trying to make adjustments. Since it's online, we can do it remotely just from anywhere we have internet access.
Okay.
Great.
Mr. Glenn is very, very knowledgeable in this, as you can tell. Right down to, I think it was a couple of years ago, we even looked at the fertilizer that we use, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And so, because you can think, and I don't know the number off the top of my head, how much sidewalk, how much green space, you probably even know that one, but green space, a lot. So when you think about the amount of activity with water, fertilization, and so forth, they get right down to the blade, pretty much.
Just to put that in perspective for you, Century High School's got about 36 acres worth of grass. In July and August, at the heat of our watering season, it's not uncommon for us to spend $20,000 a year just to irrigate the grass at Century. So it's a very big deal for us to try and manage and maintain those costs and keep them as low as possible while still trying to maintain our playing surfaces and keep things healthy and green.
Sure. Thank you. We appreciate what you do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we will have the Idaho State Insurance Plan Proposal, HB 443, presented by Dr. Howe, Donathan Ball, Carl Smart, and Brenda Miner.
As this team is rolling up here, Mr. Facer and other board members, just to let you know, we are very much in the preliminary stages of looking at this new program. We have spent probably 4 or 5 meetings talking about it. We also were able to pick up a call last week with Representative Furness, who was out of the Jefferson County area. He actually came through our district about 3 years ago, as 3 or 4 now, Carl, isn't it? As he was looking into this initially, his background, as we understand it, a bit of an entrepreneur, as well as some property management, development, investments. He seems to have a broad knowledge in a lot of things. And so I think he was the main person who was undertaking this. And so looking back to that conversation that we had with him years ago, we gave him a call just to ask if he was running lead on this, and picked his brain a little bit about some of the spreadsheets that you'll see today, some of the information, the coverage. We just want to give you kind of a broad overview. We anticipate coming back to you at least 1 or 2 more times to share additional information. Even last night into this morning, Carl was running some more numbers in the spreadsheet, and we think we're getting a little bit closer to being able to make a recommendation. Also, we have been in talks with our broker, the Lockton Group, who works with us through Pacific Source and Delta Dental and the Hartford and all of our insurance coverage. And we've also had some meetings with Pacific Source. We have some preliminary numbers, and so we know what we're working with as we project to the future. But we're going to just give you kind of an overview of what we understand with the state insurance plan. We've also put in your addendum some other information in regard to this presentation. The spreadsheet that you had in your packet earlier was just a sample. We have the actual numbers in there for you today. We have current coverage versus what the anticipated coverage is, at least or the coverage that is in place for this year for state employees, which is what we're working with. I believe they have 1 year left on the contract for the current numbers. Is that correct? And so I'm just going to turn it over to Carl, Jonathan, and Brenda and take it from here.
Can I ask a quick question? Can you also address this leadership premium? Are we going to talk
Absolutely.
about that? 'Cause
Uh-huh.
that was something I get asked about, and I don't know what that is.
You bet, we will. Thank you. Great question.
Who wants to start?
I thought you drew straws.
You didn't look at me, so I guess I'll start. So I can talk a little bit about, or I can talk to the leadership premiums. So in our district, we receive from the state around 600, what's the exact number, Carl?
$640,000, something like that.
$640,000. And what those leadership premiums cover are a lot of different things across the district. They cover things from our unit development when we work on those in the summer, building leadership teams in each school. They cover hard-to-fill stipends, which we've had for teachers who are at New Horizon, also for our SLPs, our head nurse, our school psychs, just kind of a variety of different jobs. Department chairs is another one in our schools. Wellness ambassadors, with the current health plan that we have a couple that are paid out of there. And so those leadership premiums come in, and that money comes from the state. And so now with this passing, that was part of the funding for this, is that money will no longer be coming from the state.
Okay.
And I think it was over $19 million that went out into the state that we won't be receiving. And so like I say, for our district, it's over $600,000.
Okay, thank you.
And irregardless of what we decide on insurance, that is, at least from the state level, those leadership premiums are done.
They're what?
They're done.
They're done, okay.
You know, we could do something in-house and have in the previously, but irregardless of what we decide with insurance,
That
the
finishes.
governor has,
Those are
those are finished.
for sure gone.
Okay, thank you.
Now, Doug mentioned a little bit about Mr. Furness coming down and visiting with us over the last couple or 3 years. And Miss Judy, you were at our legislator meeting in, was it December? I've lost track of time.
November, December.
December.
Right around in there.
Before the snow started to fly. But for the last several years, we've been noting with our legislators there is a need for districts to get help with their medical insurance, and we shared that with them again this last time. And so we have been asking him for help. And Mr. Furness has been doing this for 2 or 3 years now. I think this is probably the second year that this has been legislatively tried. And so we're getting there. Now, today we are not going to make any sort of recommendation of going one way or another. We need to make that clear. We're not going to make any sort of recommendation, but we have been taking their information and plugging it in and seeing where we would stand versus if we were to go this route. Okay, so in your packet, originally there were a number of items included, which included the state's rates for medical, dental, and for this included families and that sort of thing, and a copy of some of the coverage, and it doesn't include all the coverage. It just happened to, I think this happened to be the PPO, so that was in there. And of course, a calculator. We have taken this information, and after talking with our legislator last week, we kind of have a better idea where we would be if we were to change over today. Okay, and so what we first need to let you know is the state has an employer's share of the premiums. We pay 100% of the premiums here. So that would be a very different scenario under our plan. We pay 100% if they participate in the wellness and do all the wellness programs. That would be very different. Where we lack in our own plan is the ability to share the cost with the employee for family, a spouse, or dependent coverage. For us, and you could see this in the rates in there, for us to have a family coverage is, was it about $1,100?
Jonathan, we can hold up the
1152.
binder so the board can see what
And this
you're
came in,
referencing.
and this came in your addendum today.
Yeah.
This one here, it says insurance benefit rate, 21, 22.
These are the rates through.
These are the rates that we have for Pacific Source right now. So,
It's under the addendum.
yes.
Correct.
Oh, maybe.
And so, the family coverage would be very beneficial for some folks who might need it, and we can't afford to offer it to them like the state does, nor can they afford the $1,100 premium every month, which is very, very expensive. And so there are gives and takes with wherever we go with these plans. So, with that being said, the funding, which if you were to look at this is kind of where they were going. The funding this next year is, the state is going to put additional funds into the discretionary funding for the districts around the state, and it comes through the districts as a unit value. The unit value is anticipated to increase by about $6,382 to compensate districts for the ability to be on, or get onto the state's plan. Now, you've been getting emails about we need to go to the plan.
Yeah.
It's not done yet, by the way. House Bill
43.
443 has not, as far as I know, has never been signed by the governor yet. Maybe everybody else knows something
I
different.
don't think so.
It's
But-
on his desk. Just-
But all that does is sets up a pool of funds,
Yeah.
Yeah,
which,
He signed.
Ms. Clark, did you sign it today?
yeah.
We talked about the leadership premiums coming out to be able to fund this pool of $75 million. Now, the state's insurance plan is a self-funded plan. We currently have an off-the-shelf one with Pacific Source. And we've used the Blues in the past, so all the carriers are involved. To be able to get into the state's plan, you have to provide some sort of reserve to help cover the reserve that's required in a self-insured plan. And that's what the $75 million is there to do. And based upon our units, we have a pool of cash there based upon our units that we can then tap into to join that plan, and that is a one-time fee. So that would be taken care of by the state.
So after that?
So after
the
that,
leadership-
our reserves have been met,
Oh, okay.
and we don't have to do that anymore. So that is, but we have 2 years to make that decision of whether we're gonna go in and utilize those funds. If you were to read that legislation very carefully, there's $75 million, and I don't know if there's any change on that or not, but once it's gone, it's gone. So if you're kind of a late implementer and decide you want in, there might be enough to pay for part of your reserves to get in. Because it's, when they said, once it's gone, we're not gonna supplement it with anywhere else. And that payment was based upon everybody's units as of this year, from what we understood from Mr. Furnace the other day. So that is a one-time fee to get into the plan.
So our portion of that would have been about 2.7 million.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, 2.8 million.
And then, on top of that, the state would say, we're gonna send you additional $6,200 or $6,382 per unit to help you fund your insurance plans. It does not have to be the state plan. It could be any plan you have. It could be your current one. You could go out and get a new one. It doesn't matter to the state. They're gonna still send you the money. After we went through and looked at these numbers, the state would send us enough money, we would be able to join that plan with little or without any other resources from the general fund to make that happen. But they're only gonna fund you for enough money from this plan to fund just your general fund employees. And those general fund employees will be the ones that are not paid from transportation funds or the other little grants that we have in the general fund. Some of them are paid through, Lori, what's your program called? Literacy. And so on. So there's another sheet in your addendum tonight, or
It's
this
the
afternoon,
third page. The
that
spreadsheet.
has gray and yellow on it. And what I did for the last 2 payrolls, I took everybody who was paid, or who paid a premium to go towards our medical plan for this last month, and broke it down to where they were paid from, whether it was general fund, a special fund, transportation, or a grant. So on this sheet, you have a little gray bar or area at the top. This is the general fund FTEs. So these are the number of FTE we have being, that are onto the medical insurance plan. So for instance, 100, our location 510 happens to be transportation. We have 46.5. Transportation is funded differently through the state plan. There's additional transportation funds that come to us through another funding mechanism, and it's paid like at 85%, if I remember correctly, right, Jonathan? And so, no matter how much the cost increase, we should get 85% reimbursement for those funds. So they're excluded. These grants are typically not part of our general fund. We could consider them that, and but typically they're not. And so all the other FTEs included in this general fund is $925.54. Now I say that these grants, for instance, literacy has a whole different funding mechanism that comes to us, and so they're funded through that funding mechanism rather than through the general funds of the district.
And FTEs, full-time equivalent, or full-time employees.
Okay. So we have 925 and a half approximately FTE that are funded through the state's general funds, per se. Now, we had this divisor where the state had said, we are going to fund you based upon your units, 1.55 FTEs. Now, if you were to pull up the salary apportionment formula, there are a number of divisors in there that says based upon one unit or one classroom, you qualify for 1.1 teachers. I might have these a little bit wrong, and a portion for ancillary. Oh, you got it. Nice job, Brenda. Did she get it from you, Jonathan? Okay. Where are we at here? Instructional. So 1.021 for instructional staff and 0.7079 for pupil services. So for certified, it's the old 1.1, right? Administrative staff, 7.5% or 7/10 of an FTE for each unit, and classified 3/8 of a staff member per unit. So you add those up, and it comes to 1.55. And lo and behold, if we look at that 925, we're very close to what the state will fund in the way of FTEs. Talking with Mr. Furnace the other day, he says, we know that some districts have more staff than the 1.55 will fund. And they're going to try to make that equitable over the course of the program. But we are very close, and so that's the good news. And of course, we have below that special funds are 200 FTEs. Now, the general fund, if we look over here on the far right of this this chart, additional cost to the district to go under the state plan, this is just looking at the state plan right now, would cost the district about $2.3 million. It would cost employees $833,000. So we're doing a little bit of a cost shift to employees, because the total cost would be about $3.1 million. The state will send us about $3.8 million in additional funds through this unit value. Now we have really more money than is necessary to cover that increase in cost to join the state plan. So that's the good news. However, when you look at the special funds who have no way of recouping these dollars to be able to pay their funds, so we have Title I, special ed, school lunch. There's some larger funds in there. They're going to have to come up with additional $507,000 in their budgets, which is on that far right on the bottom, to be able to fund joining the state's plan. And that could be a challenge for some of those funds. And so those are some things we have to look at as we decide how we're going to go or where we're going to go.
They
So-
can still be a part of the state insurance fund, they just have that extra cost.
They have to have the extra cost. Now, it's the same as if we were to go and say we're gonna have an additional $50 a month on our premium this next year. $50 versus, let's just say it's an 8% increase. They take that 8% increase and put it in their budgets. This is a much larger increase than 8%. They're gonna have to absorb. And so, it could be a challenge for them. And so we have to look at that as we decide as we go forward, which way we might go. So, anything else you want to add, Brenda? I think that's the gist of this whole conversation we wanted to share with you today. We're looking at it. The money seems to be there, at least for the general fund. But where we go from here, we still have to make sure we have input from all of our players in here. We do have, from what we understand, we have until September to make this decision, because our contract with Pacific Source goes through August 31st. So we can't really terminate that contract early. And so September 1st, when we got the idea from Mr. Furnace that we would be able to do that. I guess if you had 2 years to do it, you could do it about any time in that 2 years. We had a discussion about deductibles, because many of our employees will have already met their deductibles by September. And so would they have to start fresh on a new plan with new deductibles? The answer to that was no. There is some sort of work through with the insurance companies that make it so they don't have to do deductibles twice. So there are some very good benefits of going to the state plan. If you have family coverage, that's going to be much more affordable. But of course, there's this cost share with employees, which we already know based upon our wellness costs that some people absorb. A lot of people have a whole lot of heartburn with $65. Now it's going to go to $75. So we will have to, like I said, get into it in more detail, and over the next several weeks, we'll come back with recommendations. We have an insurance committee where we'll get together and look at it. Likely, we'll need to talk to our employees and see if they want to add, and that's coverage or drop coverage. So that would all play into this. Doug, you were going to look like you were going to add.
I was going to see if Brenda was going to beat me to this one, but retirees.
You read my mind.
Yeah.
So retirees becomes a big piece because, for example, in the district, if you're a part of Percy, when you go to retire, any of the sick days that you have left, they take the number of sick days, divide it by 2, and times it by your daily rate. And so that money then goes to be able to pay for your insurance premiums. Okay, so that's a good amount of money for quite a few people. And so just looking at the state plan, when we spoke with Representative Furnace, he said that they have definitely been in conversations with Percy. Their plan does allow for you to stay on the plan through the age of 65, just like our current plan does. And so I'm sure that there's no way that they would be able to not be able to use those same funds for the state plan. And then at the age of 65, that you would go and find a supplement that would help you with your insurance in that respect. So I know that those are all things that are being looked over as well. The other thing is that the opportunity when we ask people to pay the $75, that they have the opportunity that they could opt out of insurance. And we have that happen every now and again now, and we have everyone stay in our plan. So this would give them the opportunity, let's say maybe they have different coverage under a spouse or something like that, that they would be able to do that. And that wouldn't hurt us. Now the important piece is through Pacific Sources that we keep as many people on as possible. And so we have everyone on our plan. And so that's another option. And then like Carl talked about, just something that really we need to look at closely is just, $75 to some of our people who are paid $11 an hour. That's their monthly grocery. And so we need to be able to be cognizant of that and look at that as we move forward, as far as if we go this route, or what salaries look like and those compensations as well.
Right. Any questions? No. Thank you. I'm glad you guys understand all that. That's a lot.
Well, you're
How are
telling
you
us something we might not
thinking
really
that?
say. we can.
How are you taking feedback? I mean, as one of you mentioned, are we getting the emails? Yes.
Yeah, you are getting emails. We had our health fair the last couple of weeks. I got some questions posed to me as I was standing around on Saturdays, this last Saturday. And this one happened to come from one of our health or wellness ambassadors, and she says, we need to do a survey. And so we're still in the very early stages of doing this. And so I'll be honest with you, we have not determined how that might happen yet, but it would probably be wise for us to try to determine, this is your scenario. If you were to add, say, your spouse or your family, this would be the change from what you have now to what it would cost you. So we'd have to play around on what kind of mechanism we would have to deliver that message and make, we can't really say you're making your decision right now and you have to go with it. It's just going to be a way to say what's going to be my cost. So right now we don't have any sort of feel for what that might end up being. We know there are people who will want to add families, right? We know that. We know that there will be people who want to just add kids, but because of the cost, it's been prohibitive for them. We also know that we're going to lose some employees because they have spouses who might work at the site who have insurance they would rather have, or we used to say they have insurance at ISU, which happens to be the same plan, so that might not be an issue anymore. So, but we will have to have that conversation. How are we going to deliver that message? And if ultimately where we go, we're going to have a very good mechanism to communicate our employees what you need to do from here to make it happen. And of course, we'd have to have that pretty much taken care of by the end of May, because that's when our teachers decide to leave for the summer, especially with a new plan if we do decide to go on September 1st. So, there are some challenges, of course, so we will make it happen.
So.
And I do know that, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, do I understand it correctly that it starts at $65 and it goes up to $251 for individual and then versus family coverage, and then with the high deductible starts at $25, goes up to $108, and then in comparison to the current plan, didn't you say it went up? How much should it go up for when you add a family to that current plan?
To our plan right now,
Yes.
if you were to add a family, your cost would be $1,152.
I thought it was.
Yeah, and
Significant.
I could see your eyes get wide when you say
Yeah.
that's pretty expensive. Yes, it is. And
Yeah, I mean,
I'll be honest with you, most of the districts around the state have rates very similar to this, because we have not been able to provide an insurance policy based upon $1,250 per FTE per year, which is what the state plan is, $1,250. Ours is right around, if you look at $800 here, 800 times 12 is $9,600. So they're providing almost $3,000 more per FTE per year to go to their insurance plan. And the state doesn't seem to bat an eye at that, but they seem to bat an eye when it comes to us. And that's when we had that conversation with the legislators over the last several years. Please help us out. And so this is their way of helping us out, and it really is. It's going to be a way of helping us out. And no matter which way we go, we've had the discussions about we need to be able to help employees cover their families. We've had this discussion for years, but we've never had the funds to do it.
and health insurance anywhere you go, any job, is so expensive. This just looks so good. I mean, compared. I don't know if it looks good to you compared to other companies.
And we've seen copies of the emails, or 2 or 3 that you've received, and they say, our insurance sucks. I mean, we get that all the time. Our insurance sucks. They apparently have never been to the marketplace to try to find out what there is.
They've never had an individual plan.
And so But when they have families or a spouse that might work for ISU or for the State Department of Highways or whoever it might be, their plan is very good compared to what we have. And so that's the comparison they're making. And just as an example, I know I'm belaboring this. We just had an employee say, my marketplace coverage went from, I don't remember the amount, but it was like $600 and it jumped to $1,800. And so, for the same coverage. And so that is out there as well. And so we have some homework to do. Sorry, Brenda.
I guess just the biggest piece is just encouraging, communication about waiting till all the facts are out and all the numbers. We had a situation today and just a survey that had went out that had some numbers from a different state plan. And so, do you know what I mean? This looks so different, and I just think if we can all stay on the same page as encouraging to make sure that we wait and see that the numbers are consistent with what comes from the state, that for this specific plan, not other plans or other state plans, I think that'll be helpful so that we can make sure that we're given the most correct information to our staff so that they can make the decision when we come up with a survey or whatever that looks like, so that they have all the facts in front of them. Because as you can tell just from today, there's a lot of information and a lot of pieces to process. We've went from here to here to here, you know what I mean? Because so many different factors play into it. So I think if we're in that situation, I can't imagine how all of our staff would feel. And then we also have the staff of the nervousness when it comes to those leadership premiums, like you mentioned, Heather. It's just that for some people, that's quite a bit of money. And so we just have to make sure that we have all of those factors.
On that leadership money, is that, you said it's gone as of it. So is that gone whether the district does this?
That's
Okay, I thought that's what
Yeah,
you meant.
great question. It's gone regardless if we stay with Pacific Source or if we go to the state plan.
Okay.
But
Okay.
we can look at funding it on our own.
The leadership premium.
Yes, I mean, and we had actually, excuse me, we had actually planned on doing that a year ago when they pulled it back because of the COVID issues. And we had, in discussions with our teachers, we said, yeah, we'll continue to pay that. But lo and behold, the state did come through and did fund leadership premiums for, was that last year or the current year, Doug? I've lost track of.
This year, for
Was
this
that for
current
the-
year.
Was it last
Previous.
year?
Yeah, the one that actually got adopted in May, right? For the year that was almost complete.
Yeah. But there are a lot of moving
Yeah.
pieces to this. I've got an email from our PEA president, says the new state insurance plan or something like that. And you know what? It's not done yet. 443 was just a portion of it. JFAC has the biggest part of this where they have to fund that extra money on the unit value. That has to go through JFAC and still be approved. So it's not a done deal yet, but the way it's been going, it looks like it could be. So, like as I said, there's a lot of moving parts on this still. So
Thank you for doing the heavy lifting on that.
And what we can do too is ask Mrs. Fisher to put out a communication to let our staff know that we are working on this. And then that way, maybe those questions won't come to the board, because we have to do our part first and educate ourselves and our staff, and then get that word out through some sort of communication that they can understand the finer details. And again, just ask for their patience as we do the same thing, because we have met numerous times. We've looked at different spreadsheets. We've looked at some of the coverage. We don't even, the retiree questions are still out there kind of looming. JFAC doesn't meet until February 18th. So we need a little more time before we can bring a recommendation to the board. We talk about leadership premiums. Sometimes that would come up normally through the negotiations process. And as you know, there's always a little bit of give and take. And we have a finite amount of money, and we can put some here or put it over here, or we can put it all there. And so that process has to transpire as well.
and I'll be honest too. Over the last 2 weeks, I mean, we had a presentation with your fellow superintendents around District 5 here. We left that meeting scratching our heads.
Completely.
We met with our legislator Friday, and suddenly the light bulb started coming on. So it's gonna take a little time, but a little bit here and a little bit there, we'll make it, hopefully understandable for everybody, so.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate your efforts in that.
Thank you.
Okay, next we will have the biannual review of the Pocatello Chubbuck School District 25 roadmap for the safe.
Oh.
Legislative.
Actually, I think I've got a quick legislative update for you, Mr. Chairman, if that'd be all right.
Okay.
And I won't, I don't have to hit every one of these. You've had an opportunity probably to look through them. In fact, if you would prefer, I could just address any questions that you might have as you read through those. My formatting's a little off. I appreciate Renee's copy. It is very nice compared to what I have. But I have some, I'd be happy to talk to you about any of those. Certainly the bond could be a concern. If you have to wait 11 months, nearly a year, and the growth that they are experiencing in the Treasure Valley area, that could certainly happen to us. I understand where they're coming from, but you just wonder, is that the right thing? If you were experiencing all that growth, you would be bringing in modules and just putting Band-Aids on things. So I kind of wonder about that one. Career ladder, that makes sense. When people come in, you certainly want to grant them their expertise based upon where they've taught, even if it was in a different state. The Powerball was kind of a concern last year. I think you read through that, and it's approaching nearly $1 billion that Powerball has contributed to our school buildings. And by 2030, there was a news article out, I believe it was Idaho Ed News, that talked about the number of buildings that could be necessary in Idaho if the growth is sustained over time. Internet, not a big deal.
I did have a question about the empowering parents.
Uh-huh.
Is that for low-income families in public education?
So
Or is it low-income families outside of public education?
So my understanding is that it might be both. It could be public, which would be traditional or charter schools, and then as well with private schools. And it does have those different levels put into place where if the money's not gone, then other levels of income can apply for that. And that was a concern with this bill last year, is that it might open the door to funding private schools. Yep.
But it's just the premium that just goes for personal expenses per child?
Yes.
Not necessarily going toward.
Right, for tuitions,
Tuition.
example, yeah. And so up to $3,000 per family. Mhm. Any other questions that you might have? The mask is certainly an interesting one. I think that was 431 or something. We'll see where that goes. Education expenses. I'm not seeing any others that really jump out, that unless you have concerns or questions. Nope. Okay, and if you do, please call me and I'll share with you what I know and what I understand. And then I think we probably, it seems like we have this every agenda from now until the time the legislature ends. And so we'll have an opportunity to visit more about any one of these. Okay, so now, if you want to do, if Mr. Chairman's ready.
Okay, shall I read that? Okay, next we'll have the biannual review of the Pocatello Chubbuck School District 25 roadmap for a safe return to in-person instruction and continuing continuity of services for the 2021-2022 school year, presented by Dr. Howe, Courtney Fisher, Brenda Miner, Sue Pettit, and Lori Craney.
Okay, so as Chairman Facer said, this is a biannual review as part of the state's requirement for return to school in the fall. We were required to have this biannual review, so this has been scheduled since August. Really, the changes we're proposing are textual only. I'm sure you looked through it and noticed that there weren't any major revisions. I will just walk through very briefly, so then we can have a chance to address any questions that you have about the roadmap moving forward. Guiding principles, those remain the same. The only change on page 1 throughout is the revision date, and then the adoption date will change. You'll have the opportunity to potentially review and adopt these changes at the regular board meeting. Same thing with page 2. No changes there except for that date. Just want to keep in mind this roadmap has really served us well this year as we've worked through all the challenges with COVID. Our intent and our goal was to create a really flexible plan, and we feel like we have done that. Provides us the flexibility that we need to make changes. I went over at the last board meeting or work session the leadership dashboard, which is page 3. So I don't feel like we need to really spend any time on that unless you have questions at the end. We can revisit this, but there were no changes to this page. The decision criteria, we did make a couple of changes to this page on page 4. Proactive was spelled incorrectly, so we made that correction, and then we also added at the end of that, this is in phase 1, the 3rd box, school buildings open. We did add the phrase may include emergency closures. You'll remember that we have had to close school once based on our staffing shortage, and so we wanted to make sure that the plan reflected and gave us the ability to make that decision when necessary. On page 5, we revised as of February 4th, 2022. Our school district is in phase 1. We continue to be in phase 1 and operate in phase 1. We, in the first column with face coverings, we took off, the CDC has made several changes with their recommendations on face coverings. So we wanted to remove our definition that we were using as a school district on face coverings. So we just, the board decided that face coverings would be recommended but optional. So we wanted to keep that in, and then we revised our link to the CDC, and so that link just takes anybody who wants that masking recommendation directly to the CDC's website, and they can use that information how they see fit. Moving on to page 6, we that top corner before phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, we felt like we needed to revise that to better reflect what we're doing here, and so we just refer people back to that decision criteria on page 4 rather than the previous sentence. In phase 1, in the bullets, it's the 5th bullet down. We took out at least daily and shared objects after use, so will just be clean and disinfect frequently touched surfaces. And then moving on to page 7, the reference decision criteria, that will follow. That change has been made on every page that it's applicable to. And then in phase 2, the second bullet on that top section and transporting learners was repetitive. Everything in phase 1 applies to phase 2 and phase 3, and so we just took out that redundancy in that section. Moving on to page 8, no further changes besides the one I've already mentioned. Page 9, same thing. Page 10, we made one adjustment to the date. We had 2021, even though that date has already passed, we wanted to correct that. So it says January 24th, 2022 in the elementary online learning program, that first section, last bullet. Moving on to page 11, we updated the information for the APEX secondary online learning program for the 3rd trimester. That registration deadline is March 3rd, so we updated that. Moving on to page 12, again, the quarantine and isolation guidelines have also changed very frequently, so we've tried to keep up with those changes. So we deleted this section and just link again directly to the CDC's guidelines on that quarantine and isolation. we've tried to provide this as a resource so that families that are looking for further information, you can just link directly to the document, to that information that you're looking for from a credible and reliable source. On page 13, in the process and timeline review, we're really not updating our FAQs. Those have really died down, and so we eliminated that, and just the school district roadmap is available and have a link to the PDF of the roadmap. And then the final change is just this back page. This has been replaced. We had kind of a flow chart for when to quarantine that our school secretaries and administrators were using. So we've updated this and replaced that page because it was outdated based on the new guidelines with quarantines being 5-day recommendations. So that is it for changes. They are all very basic, but we will take questions, and I have others here who can help answer questions if you have any about processes or anything else about the roadmap.
I guess one of the biggest questions I have and that I've gotten from others, and even before I became a member of the board, is what is being used, and I understand here from page 3 what the criteria is for moving from each level, but I think it still is pretty nebulous. As, you know, how was the decision to close school? I mean, was there, I thought there was kind of a attendance baseline, that once we hit that, then we'd really look at the next phase. And the same goes for, obviously the biggest issue at that time was the teacher shortage. And so what was it that you decided was okay, at this level now we're going to, that's what has never been clear to me, is where, and I realize it's probably not something you can stick a fork in and say, okay, exactly at this number is when we're going to do something. But I think that's been the thing that has been frustrating for parents and teachers, is this not knowing. And then what it ends up happening is then, and maybe it's just the nature of the beast, but people are not reporting because they don't want to be counted, or they don't want to, and so I think that's what's led to what, the shutdown, is because people are sending their kids sick anyway. And I know we can't control that. I understand that. I know that that's out of our control, but I think one of the things that I'm hearing the most is that it's still kind of squishy. And so how will we know when things might change? And maybe I'm just making that as a statement, not expecting a true answer, but I think that's...
I would agree with you. It's all squishy data. We love that word around here. We use it a lot, actually. For us to say, put a number on staff, for example, certified staff, we have, I don't know, Brenda, correct me if I'm wrong, but typically we have 140 to 150 substitutes. So when on that Thursday evening, we knew that we were at 115 certified absences for that Friday. Given the response of subs over the past few weeks or previous to that event, we knew that not many of them were turning up for jobs, perhaps because they were ill as well. But then within our resources at the district office, and from our gateway team and other resources, even throughout that week, at what point do we feel like we can continue to, offer services and have our children come to school? And so at that point, because it had built all that week, we had been at 95, 105, we were headed for 115. We were okay with 95. 105 was a little tough. 115, we could have never pulled it off. And so that's just one example of certified staff. And then you have classified staff. So how many of, we're utilizing all of our paraprofessionals to take over classes for typically the teacher that they work with. And then we have transportation. There may have been an issue on that Friday afternoon as well with transporting our learners in the afternoon, trying to get them home. So getting them to school didn't seem to be a problem, but talking with the bus garage, at least 3 calls on Thursday afternoon, they were very concerned that we wouldn't be able to get our learners home. The numbers with students, we could say, okay, if it dips below 80%, then that's cause for concern. If we put 75 on it, do we shut down a whole school or a whole district at 75, or do we just shut down a school? And so there are so many questions that came with so many answers that we felt like by leaving it in more broad terms, we could make a decision that was best based upon current conditions at the time. And I don't know that that's the best. I don't know if there was ever a best,
I don't think you could probably do that.
Right.
but
I-
it just gave us, these give us a ballpark. But, you know, to say, okay, at 85 staff members, we're closing, you know, the whole district. Well, they might be clustered in specific schools. For example, we saw kind of an outbreak, if you will, in at least our data, Ellis, Gate City, Highland. Yeah, it was kind of that corner. So were we able to keep schools open and keep kids coming? We were, up until that point where district-wide, we couldn't. So, and you know, we'd be happy to take any input from the board. I'm giving you the background of 2 years with what we've tried to develop. And again, right or wrong, I don't know that there is one.
This is one of those things you have to go by the seat of your pants.
It is a little bit, it is hard to quantify, I feel like. And as our team first put the very first draft of this roadmap together, we tried to get so specific that we, again, had more questions than we had answers. Well, what if? Well, what about this? How come? Why? And then ultimately, I think we came to the conclusion that almost the more broad we leave it, the more flexibility it allows us to make decisions based almost on a day-by-day basis.
I mean, the situation has changed hour by hour in certain cases.
Right.
And
Well,
you'll,
and I've seen your attendance rates are going up, so I mean, maybe
and
we
you
can-
notice,
is
right.
it?
And you notice even on the community level, I mean, that line, that trajectory was straight up and down.
Right.
And now it's straight, it's going back the other direction, and our attendance and our numbers reflect that. And in fact, I think one of the benchmarks you can use is that weekly report
Mhm.
that I send either Friday or Monday, to give you the picture of what our staff COVID numbers are and what our student COVID numbers. We know those numbers are inaccurate.
Yeah.
We know they are, but they still provide a snapshot,
Mhm.
and that snapshot follows the community trend. So it's still a fairly accurate picture to say if we went 2 weeks ago, we had 122 district-wide cases. Last week we had 44.
Right.
So, you know, we're doing the best we can with inaccurate numbers.
Well, and I do think, that, you know, continuing to provide that kind of information, I think
Mhm.
that's what calms some of the anxiety that's out there. I mean, obviously, I guess the question that we kind of brought up, I don't know, what, one of these meetings we've had about, you know, the sub shortage and how that's being addressed, and is that still a concern? You know, I mean, you hear how other districts or, you know, in other states even are handling it with premiums, and, you know, you hear how other districts pay more than we do, and I mean, how are we incentivizing to encourage more subs so that, because I will say, you know, and I understand keeping schools open but, you know, my own daughter, who attends Century, sitting in a class where 3 or 4 classes have all been pushed into a gym, I don't think that is really the ideal education situation either.
Right.
And so how, you know, it seems to me that one of the issues, if there's a way that we can address, even if it's short-term, encouraging more people to become subs, can
Right.
help.
Right, and Mrs. Miner has done a great deal of research on this. We have bounced ideas off of one another. We've bounced ideas off of cabinet. With each incentive that we put in place, we don't see, it doesn't move the needle
Really?
hardly at all.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I'll let Brenda talk to this a little bit more, but even in the Treasure Valley area, they did some pretty, you know, I won't call them outlandish, but pretty excessive,
Yeah.
went to extremes in doubling the amount that they were paying substitutes. And I don't know that that was any more productive than the incentives that we put in place, but I'm going to let her just kind of take that one.
So one thing I want to do is just celebrate the fact that where our numbers are now. I mean, they are, every morning I'll think, oh, is this right? And I'll look at it, and it'll be down in the 47, 50. But the part that's even more impressive about that is after that one day that we had off, and, you know, just sending out a letter saying, you know, making sure that, you know, we have your accurate schedules, those kinds of things, and just seeing how important they are. We have had so many more subs that take jobs, and that they understand what that can look like and how important they are. And just, we had another sub meeting the other day, and just the value of when they go to a building, making sure, one of the big things for them is just, what does it feel like when they walk into a building? Are they welcomed? Are there, here's a water, here's a granola bar, here's the ticket for your lunch, have a great day, those kinds of things. Just really emphasizing that, because we know money is a big factor, but what we're really seeing is that people really do care, and they really want to be helpful. We had a gentleman from that came in today that is one of our probation officers here in town, and he said that he's going to start subbing, that his employer is going to let him come in and do that. And so just knowing and being able to get that information out there, being able to have our ISU students and working with the Department of Ed up there to make sure that they understand that we'll take you, even if it's you can only do Mondays or you can only do Fridays. And we did change the fact that we added a new run of, if they have a degree, and it's not a teaching degree, that they're paid a little bit more as well. And then, but like Dr. Howell said, we have added quite a few incentives this year, and it's the same people who are super excited about those same incentives. And so, again, just making sure that we're communicating with them and just making sure they understand their importance. And, you know, when you spoke about your daughter and out at Century and some of those situations, we had a substitute, a new sub that was coming in, that was nervous about those situations as well from a sub standpoint. And so just making sure that those are communicated with us, and that our staff understand that if they don't want to take that extra class or those jobs, that we can look at problem solving, because that really did happen when all of us were out in the buildings and subbing, that there was a lot of really good information that came, and that we got to see different things. But just keeping them in school, when I think about it, is everyone has such different lifestyles that they come from. And so the fact of how important it was for us to keep them in school is that a lot of those kids, they're getting their breakfast and their lunch there. Their instruction maybe wasn't stellar, even though I'd like to still think I'm a teacher at heart, and when I subbed in a class that I did okay. And I think that all of us feel that way, but just that they're there, and they're there with that consistency, and that they're being fed, and that they have someone looking over them. I think that became a real key component for us. It's just how important that is, that they're there and that people are caring about them. And so again, I'm not taking anything away from any of our subs or us as subs or any of those things being there, and it's not the same as a teacher, we know that, but just that structure that they still felt and able to just pull it off with one day is pretty impressive. And so that's kudos to everybody who worked so hard to do that.
I think our staff deserves a tremendous amount of congratulations for pulling together and living our vision and our mission, which is more together. Our in-building staff, our administrators, how they've been filling those classes to make sure that we have that continuity in instruction has been nothing short of remarkable and commendable.
Mm-hmm. It is tough to put into place an incentive that you think will bring someone to the table, but then you have to think on the back side of that. At some point, you'll have to reduce those incentives. And will those people stick around? Are they maybe there for somewhat of the right reason, if you will? But, at the federal government level, how much is too much? How much is not enough? It's always a balance of trying to find where you can sustain over time, and where you just get too far beyond the mark that you'll never be able to get it back. So that's what we try to balance every day. At School District 25, I can tell you that from very, very personal experience. It's all about the balance. Yeah.
I appreciate all that has been done to keep us in school, because that's my goal too, is to not have schools closed. I am so nervous about the anxiety, the depression, all the fallout that came in regards to school closures. That's on my mind a lot, and so I would not want that to happen. I would feel comfortable, a little more comfortable with kind of a backup plan if we do come into a situation where we have a big spike. I hear there's another, there always is. COVID's going to be around forever, so there probably will be ebbs and flows. I would like kind of a plan as far as like, okay, we're going to pay the subs comparatively to, what's around us as an emergency plan, something in place so that that doesn't happen if possible. Things are gonna happen still, and it's fine, and I think that everybody has rolled with it, and I feel like everyone has stepped up and worked so hard. And so that part is so good, we have that. But just a backup plan for emergency, I would feel comfortable with that, with something like
Kind
that.
of along those same lines, one of the things that I also heard, in addition to the tremendous work that our staff is doing, is the burnout of the staff. And I know that, the comment was made that, well, that's their job, but I think some of the extra, not having that planning time, not having, having to cover during lunch or wherever, and not having, that's the other thing that I heard, the other piece of it, is that
Yes.
we really pushed our teachers throughout that period. And again, maybe having that backup plan so that we know when,
Yeah,
I think burnout is real.
Yeah,
think
and
it's a real
Yeah.
thing.
I agree with that, and I feel like maybe we can learn from this experience and give the teachers kind of an assurance it won't happen again. If at least we make an effort for it to not happen again, even though we're doing a lot of things. But a backup plan as far as like increased pay for sub, or just something, just as a backup plan, so that if we see a surge coming, we can put it into place. The teachers won't, because the teachers are suffering sickness too in their families, among themselves. And if they come to school, they're not still tired, and then they have the extra work. It just sort of all adds up.
Compounds.
It's all adds up with everything that the teachers that I've heard from are feeling that I feel like I can't take days off because I feel guilty, and I feel like they have to be there because we can't find subs for them. And so there's that feeling like they've got to be there anyway, even if they're not feeling up to it, or give up vacation. I'm completely opposed to teachers having to cancel or postpone vacations. I would not want that. So I don't know if we can somehow come up with an emergency backup plan that we could just have to put in place if that happens again.
Yeah, and maybe, you can help me kind of brainstorm, because, if we had an emergency backup plan, just knowing where those people would come, like where we would find more people to be a sub, because like I say, a lot of it is, we kind of have them on the books, so to speak, but yet their schedules don't allow for it. So like when Dr. House said 120, on an average day, even on a great day, we fill 50 jobs, right? And so that being the case, as far as, and the other piece is just, hoping and wanting teachers to feel comfortable to communicate with their administrators if they don't feel like they want to do those things, and so that we can brainstorm plans for them as well. I know a lot of teachers. I bumped into a gentleman on Saturday at the store, and he was just so happy that he was able to take those classes to help with some financial issues in his family, right, as far as being able to have that sub amount doubled. And that came through communication. We were going to go back to our regular rates, and then that first week, within 2 or 3 days, we realized, oh my goodness, that's not going to happen. We need to continue to pay teachers at that high rate because of all those things, because they're taking their work home and all of those things. And so it's such a hard balance for some of the people who have really appreciated it, and just being able to continue, as you can tell, that's such a big piece for me, that communication with their administrators, that if they're not feeling it, you know what I mean, or they really don't want to do it, to continue to have those conversations so that they don't feel forced,
Yeah.
because we would never want that. And like you say, to not be able to take a vacation. I think some of that is just built into us as educators, that we have this guilt complex of leaving. And
It is, you feel responsible.
You do.
And
that's such
for them
a
for
great
that.
quality for teachers,
They do.
and almost to a fault sometimes, that they don't take care of themselves,
Pretty
right?
universal.
Right, I think
And
anywhere you go, and that's why we see the shortage of subs everywhere as well.
that's why I wouldn't want to encourage them to give it up, because they already, I think, feel guilty taking it off, But anyway, as far as the backup plan, just ideas, I would just say increase sub pay temporarily. And I would say, oh, I had one other idea, and I can't think of
Why don't you maybe even give me a call or something, or come in? I'd love to meet with you, and we can brainstorm some ideas, okay?
Yeah, that would be, I think it would be good if we came
Yeah.
up with.
Okay.
And when they're not well, we would encourage them to use their sick leave. What we have done is, rather than, take a vacation in the middle of the school year, and we have some other times that are available from different breaks, extended breaks and so forth, but the board authorized us to double the personal leave pay. So rather than use those 5 days for personal leave and, take a ski trip or what have you, for all of our staff, classified and certified, administrative alike, we have offered to double that personal leave reimbursement. So, but
And
it's
so
sick is sick,
Is that
and
meaning if they give up that or postpone it, or what do you?
so
exactly-
the district grants every employee 5 personal days in addition to 14 sick leave days.
Mhm.
And so those 5 days could be utilized however you see fit. But if a person does not utilize them, then they are able to be reimbursed for the 5 days. And so rather than
Rather than rolling
yeah,
over, do they normally roll over?
just
Yeah.
one,
Just
just
one.
one carries over.
One does. Oh,
But,
I see.
yeah, they can roll one, but
Then
we
they
would
get
pay.
paid double for the others that
Yeah,
they didn't take.
Yeah, so that's another incentive that we put in place, just to ask our teachers to be the one in the classroom,
Mhm.
so it is more productive.
It is better,
Uh-huh.
for sure.
Yeah, but we will look at the subrates. I talked to Mr. Balls about, as you sent me, forwarded me an email, and I don't recall, I think you did as well, about the subrate, and we've talked about just, increasing that, say, $20, and then looking at the breakdown, maybe for those with certificates and those with advanced degrees, but maybe looking at the $100 as opposed to, I think it's 80 or 75 right now.
Right, and there's so many different rates, and so maybe if there was a flat rate, so those are all
Yeah.
definite
Yeah.
possibilities we can look into, okay?
Yeah, I like those ideas. And the only other thing that I would suggest as far as with the kids, I know there was complaints with teachers, with kids coming sick, but then at the same time, kids not coming. So it's hard. They have the loss of learning, but then they're coming sick, so it's hard to know. But we talked about this last time, I think, a little bit, just the fact that if there was a COVID positive test in a family, that maybe we could have a consistent rule for everyone. I talked to 2 doctors, and kind of the consensus among medical healthcare is that if you have a COVID positive in a family, they do not recommend testing the rest of them. For one thing, it's more spread to go out and then go into the office, but it's just sort of redundant if you have
Some
that
of them, yeah.
positive test already, to then have to pay for additional doctor's office. That was my only other suggestion, is just if they have a COVID positive test within a household, but not if they're not sick. We don't need to have, the CDC doesn't recommend quarantine anymore. Is that correct? With no symptoms? That's not recommended. Quarantine if you have no symptoms, right? That's what I just read here.
What, was it asymptomatic? I thought it was 5 days and then 5 days with a mask, but
That's what I
again, like Courtney was saying, things change quickly, so I'm not sure.
It was, I just had it up here.
If you test positive, there's a difference between being
If you test
asymptomatic.
positive.
If you test positive, it's 5 days.
Right.
If you've been exposed to somebody with a positive case, then there's no quarantine, but they
That's
do
what I
recommend
mean.
that you wear a mask.
Exactly. So if they have a
For 10
COVID
days
positive in a
And
family.
test on day 5, so.
Yes. So if they have a COVID positive in a family, it doesn't mean they need to stay home. Because if they don't have symptoms, I think everyone's in agreement that asymptomatic, if you're asymptomatic, it's not recommended you get tested, and it's not recommended you quarantine. Is that what I think,
We don't have any requirements for isolation at
right?
all.
So that's my only suggestion, is to offer that as is to allow one COVID test, then if other kids get sick with the same symptoms, to not ask them to go into a doctor and pay for another doctor visit.
And we're just not counting those And it's different with staff, and I'll let Brenda talk about.
Oh, yeah, I'm
about
not
staff.
talking about staff. I
But
understand the
with
rules for staff.
students, we are only counting in our official case count numbers, those with a positive test. And the absences,
Right.
it's just a note, and then they
Right,
can figure that out. It's still excused.
right. So would it be the excused absent, a COVID excused absence if they have another member of the family? Because I think there was kind of, I don't know if that was a policy.
Sue or Lori, can you talk to us about what's happening at the building level, your understanding?
I think it would be. nice
I know
to
we
have a
talked about some
consistent-
flexibility, but I don't think we have a hard and fast rule.
That's kind of what I was wondering, if we could
Yeah.
maybe articulate something that would be kind of the same for everyone. Just, what's recommended with physicians is one test positive, another one comes with the same symptoms. Don't bring them in and test them.
So what we mark them
Will you bring that mic up?
So what we mark them in for our attendance, if they have a COVID test from the doctor, we're marking it COVID.
Yes.
If they have a home test, or if they are home and someone has a COVID test, their parent got COVID tested, and they're home with the same symptoms, we are writing ill, positive test in the household, positive home test, but it's marked ill, it's not marked COVID.
Okay.
So that's,
So it would
that's the
be
only difference.
excused similarly
So,
to a
yeah.
COVID absence?
Mhm. So when it
Okay.
comes to the end, for secondary, when it comes to the end of the trimester, and we're saying, okay, you've missed 45 days of 55, why?
Well, 5 days wouldn't
Um,
make a difference.
And so we can say, well, these 5 were ill, but they're marked, you had a COVID test in your household. Those 5, you know what? Yeah, you probably had COVID.
So that's kind of the positive,
Mhm.
that's kind of the policy then,
Mhm.
is that those aren't going to necessarily count against them?
Correct.
Okay, okay, that's just what I was wondering, because I just don't want, I got a message from a mom who,
People are
was
getting hung
worried
up on the
about
word
that.
excused absence and unexcused absence.
Yeah.
An absence is an
Yes.
absence is an absence is an absence. It gets to the end of the trimester and we say, okay, these were medical absences, you had your tonsils out.
So
There's
the
nothing you could have done,
medically
you
excused
could have
wouldn't-
done nothing about that.
right,
If you're marked ill for those 2.5 weeks and we write, you had a COVID test and you were out because you were sick.
then that's really equivalent
Those
to
are
a
equivalent.
doctor's excuse.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. That's really what my question was.
We have that capability to put right next
A
to
note.
it a note.
Mhm.
And so sometimes parents don't see that. When they pull it up, it'll say ill, and they won't see that. But when we go in and we look on a case-by-case basis, those notes are right there that we can pull up to
Oh,
see.
so you can see
Mhm.
if it was a COVID positive test in the household?
Absolutely.
And then that wouldn't count against them?
Mhm.
Correct.
But everything else would, of course,
Mhm.
just not?
Right.
The COVID positive or the COVID positive in the household?
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, I'm sorry it took a while to clarify. But now I can at least pass that on.
Okay, thank you. We now accept requests for public comment.
We got none.
Okay, seeing as how we have none, that concludes this meeting. I hereby declare this meeting adjourned.
All right.
So we need to stick around for just a minute, though.